community. This is a meeting we've been holding for several years. Usually we do it on a monthly basis, but we started very recently doing it every other month, just to make sure that we used everyone's time well and that we really had enough content to justify a meeting. But we certainly do today, and we're really excited about sharing what we've got for you. And as you can see on your screen, we're going to focus largely, but not exclusively, on the findings from our 2014-2015 annual report. Some of you may have attended a briefing that we held last Thursday, December 5th, on this topic. For that event, we really focused more deeply on one aspect of the findings in this report. However, for this report, we're going to have a much more extensive view of what has happened in the two programs over the years, and so we're excited to share that with you. And we are also adding some material that is not in the report, some questions that came out of the briefing that we thought may be of interest. So without further ado, let's dive right on in and get to the content for today's conversation. As always, we like to start by making sure that you know how to participate. And then, again, we really encourage all of you to submit your questions as we go along. And there's a lot of interesting findings here. But sometimes, we're so familiar with the content, we use a bit of shorthand. And so if there's anything that I'm going over that is not clear, just type that on in, and I'm happy to kind of provide a fuller explanation. For many of you on the call today, here's a quick agenda. We're going to touch on the report methodology, go through the two programs, spend some time on what are the implications. Like, the whole purpose of this report is not really just to know, it's to shine a light on what we need to do. And so we're going to talk about the implications and what policy solutions those implications point to, have some questions and answers, and then have a brief update. But for the report methodology, I guess all of these bullets can be summarized in a few different words. Exhaustive, exhaustive, exhaustive. Maybe I'll hold there. We do a very thorough survey of all of the providers. We also surveyed all of the county administrators, the kind of liaisons, the county point people for these two programs. We also draw on data from our participant tracking system, which includes data on about just slightly over half of the young people in THP+. We kind of compare some of what some of our survey findings with what is in the official CWS CMS archive, which is managed by Berkeley. And then we complement it all with an exhaustive set of interviews to really get the flavor behind the numbers, what's really going on. And we talk to young people, we talk to providers, counties, and then in the end we try and paint a picture of what actually has happened with these programs in the last year. And so we're going to start with an oldie but a goodie, our very own THP+ program, something many of us love very dearly. It's been around for some time. For those of you who are not familiar with the program, it was established by the California Youth Connection in 2001. It originally had a 60% county share of cost. And when you look at this graph on your screen, you can see the first couple years, not too many counties were taking up the option to implement the program. This is also a period of pretty serious recession, and so there wasn't a lot of extra money sitting around to implement the program. Then in 2006-07, the county share of cost was removed, and you see the explosion in the utilization of this program. It was really a massive period when counties just jumped in. Now, however, the real high mark was that 2008-2009. Since then, we've had a gradual decrease in the program. It was not really what I would call material until around 2011. And as those of you who are active in this community know, that is when we realigned child welfare. And we have seen a decrease in the number of contracted beds in about 10 counties. You can see that at the bottom part of your screen. So where are we now? In the 14-15 year, there were 1,257 beds contracted. And so that's and there were 1,696 young people who participated in the program over 6 years. I mean, over the 12 months of the year. Now, what's interesting in this graph, as you can see, the orange line on the bottom has reduced much less than the blue line on top. So fewer young people are passing through the program, but there's also a net reduction in the total number of contracted beds. So as with any data analysis, we are measuring the reality. We don't always have the answer for the why. I'm going to throw out a few possible whys that you can think about in your program or your county. One possible why is with the extension of foster care in 2012, the demographics of this program changed significantly. We have more older youth and we have more parenting youth who tend to be retained in the program much more than younger youth. So, essentially they have had the experience of being homeless, and they are in some ways much more likely to be sustained in the program. They're much less likely to have a short duration of stay. Now the reason for that, again, that's more speculation, but that major demographic change could be one of the reasons, and we tested that out in our interviews. Some people agree, some people disagree, but we're pleased that the contracted number of beds has not decreased more than it has, so there we go. So let's look at who is providing these beds. This is a new feature that we've never included before. These are our largest THP+ providers. And what you have the provider's name, and you have the number of young people served over 12 months, not served in a moment in time. This is served over 12 months. So this includes young people who have a short period of stay, young people who stayed for the full year. And it's a great collection of providers. It's a lot of names many of you may be familiar with. They're seeing a lot of young people. They're serving a lot of young people. Many of these organizations serve young people in more than one county. So we're very pleased about that. We also looked at who is serving the most custodial parents. That's always a big topic of conversation here at the John Burton Foundation, and we summarized that data. First Place, in a lot of meetings with First Place, we hear them raise the issue of the needs of custodial parents. Well, that is because, in fact, they are, over the 12 months, served the largest number of them. But every one of these organizations, and many more, are serving custodial parents. And what's not on this chart is their children. So we've got the 39 young people that Covenant Community Services is serving. That may be anywhere from 39 to 50 children. So that's something we're going to add to our survey next year, because we have to appreciate that these young people who are parents, they have children. We can't pretend like these children don't exist. That being said, we kind of have for the last 10 years. We've never included it in our survey. Shame on us. So we're going to change that next year, and we're going to make sure to count that, because I think it tells a very important story about the program. So let's talk about the rates. We had a concern that rates may there is discretion, quite a fair amount of discretion at the county level about the rates, and we know with the tremendous cost of housing and, frankly, the cost of personnel, which are the two key elements of providing this program, being concerned that we have a healthy rate, a rate that is going to allow a program to go out and really purchase safe housing and hire qualified people. So we have in each of the program models, except for scattered site, seen a slight reduction. A single site down from 2,681 in 2009-10 down to 2,457. The scattered site has actually ticked up by about, not significantly, but I guess $42. And then host family has essentially remained the same, a $1 difference in those 5 years. So that is good news, we think. We feel very encouraged about that. It seems like from our interviews that you are having very real and ongoing conversations between counties and providers. You're communicating about the cost of housing, and that both, the counties are really committed to ensuring this is a quality program. Because if they weren't, we would see a reduction in the rate, and we're not seeing what I would describe as significant one. These are small fluctuations. Housing model, has remained virtually unchanged in the last 4 years. And if we took this graph back, 6 years, it would remain unchanged. So you can see the 3 different models: the single site, scatter site, and host family. And while there's, and you can see the range in the different models. And one thing that, but that being said, if you look at it as a distribution, these outliers are exactly that. They're outliers. So I don't want to paint the picture that, wow, this rate's all over the place. The vast majority, about 85% of the providers, cluster very closely to those average rates. So one thing that, so that's pretty much unchanged. One thing that I'd like to just share with you about a housing model is a very interesting one that I learned about recently in Los Angeles, where a provider is trying to couple THP-Plus participants with seniors who have kind of excess housing capacity in the host family model. So the senior citizen is getting a little extra income. The THP-Plus participant is being coupled with a senior, and actually in a nice property in a safe neighborhood. So this is something has certainly piqued my interest as our population of boomers continue to age and also continue to occupy housing stock with excess capacity. So I just want to share that with you really briefly. It's very interesting to me, and I think it may be something we want those of you who are doing it to teach others, because there's a lot of, it could really be a win-win. That's a little bit about the kind of program. Now let's look at the young people, and that's the reason we're all in it. Here's some demographics for our young people in THP+. I put an arrow by the ones that are like, we'd like you to really pay attention to. The first one is the age. You can see the massive shift from 2012-13 to 2014-15, where we literally flip-flopped in how many young people were ages 18 to 20 versus 21 to 24. So this is a program that is really, most young people entering this program, and the top set of numbers are entering 8 out of 10 at age 21 or older. And that's, as we all know, because of extended foster care, and that is had a huge response, which we are very happy about. But it does mean that this program is serving an older population. A lot of other things are largely unchanged. The number that self-identifies LGBTQ uptick slightly, but that could just be, it's hard to know if that's anything real or not. The kind of racial ethnic composition, not a significant change there. The thing that I would point to is the custodial mother, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. That is not an entrance, that is an exit. That's the one statistic that's different than the rest of them. But continuing to deepen the number of young people who are parenting dependents. And we have a little bit more about this on our next slide. So we really are seeing this program as young people, again, are staying in care till 21. We know 1 in 3 young women who exit at that time will be a custodial parent, and they're bringing their children to this program. So it's exciting to be able to serve these young people. We know how vulnerable they are. We know how vulnerable their children are. And so it's a real opportunity to ensure that young people transition out of care who are custodial parents into a supportive setting. And it seems like counties and providers are really answering the call to that. And so we aren't, while we'd like more, planned pregnancies, the fact that this program exists is really preventing young people from falling off a cliff. And those of you who need to go and privately fundraise to kind of augment your THP+ funding, we hope you are making that case. Because if not for this program, I don't think, all of us know there's just not that much else out there. The third bullet is the one that gives us pause. The percentage of young women who enter the program as a custodial parent and enter it is almost doubles. And so we really want to step back and think about the opportunity we have to prevent that. How do we integrate family planning into our case management model in a way that respects the privacy and choice of young people? It's a very sensitive topic. It's a very charged topic. These are legal adults, but how do we support them in their decision-making in a trauma-informed manner so that we can not see that figure double? Parenting youth come with all the challenges that you can imagine. Up here is just kind of the tip of the iceberg, frankly. Child care, the safety of the child, the cost of the additional cost of housing. We've heard from providers really the ideal setup for a parenting youth in THP Plus is their own apartment. You've got a lot of dynamics between parents. You've got a lot of issues. Some people say, well, they can support each other. That's kind of a best case scenario. Other times, you've got a lot of drama. So it can work a lot of different ways, but there often are additional housing costs. The youth partner, the rate of intimate partner violence among this population is very high. And so really managing that and finding a productive way for that young person to be part of the life of this young family. And then again, the unplanned repeat pregnancies. So it's really a collection of issues that are present in the situation where a young person is serving parenting dependence. Homelessness, this is also the two things, as THP Plus is serving more older youth, we have more parents and we have more young people entering from homelessness. So what is the implication of that? The implication is more trauma, more time where they may have been victimized and traumatized from their experience in homelessness. We know there are very few youth shelters. The statewide capacity is something like 400. And so if a young person has been sheltered in an adult shelter, they may be safe, they may not be safe, or they may be doubling up or kind of doing, being engaged in survival sex in order to have a roof over their head. The bottom line is, the good news is THP+, THP Plus is there to receive them. But what this says to me is more young people than not are going to, unfortunately, brush up against this reality. So how about some good news for a change? We are having a growth in earnings in THP Plus, despite a tough economy nonetheless for this sector. Programs and young people and counties are getting out there. They're making connections with jobs, and they're increasing their wages. And so that's very positive. More are employed at exit than entry, and they're earning more at exit than at entry if they did work. They're also more connected with public benefits, which are a literal lifeline between for these young people. CalWORKS, SSI, CalFresh, WIC are just some examples. We also did a little bit of a deeper dive. Some programs are really doing an excellent job of maximizing financial aid. It seems as though they've kind of decided to become really expert in it and are fully utilizing that complement, which really, it is a public benefit. It is a public source of funding, and it can make a huge amount of difference in the lives of young people enrolled in community college or career and technical ed. Now here is an interesting story to tell about THP Plus and education. So at entry into the program, 9% describe themselves as having disenrolled from college. That percentage doubles at exit. So, again, these are the facts, the story, how we interpret this data, or how we understand what conclusion to draw from it is something that's in some ways more complex. So we want to combine it with, are young people enrolling and are they staying enrolled? And we see from that second graph, they're really not. That the percentage that is enrolled at exit is only 1% higher than when they enter. So when you combine that with this doubling of the rate of disenrollment, we can start to see a picture where young people are coming into the program, enrolling, and then disenrolling. And so I think that there aren't any easy answers here. I don't have the magic bullet as to how to help young people in foster care persist in community college and increase their course completion. Fortunately, many programs are really working deeply on this, and we have experts on campuses in campus support programs. So one thing this may speak to is really targeting campuses that have robust campus support programs. And as many of you may know, the Chancellor's Office recently selected 10 districts and 25 campuses to receive $15 million to create and operate these specialized programs. And so it takes changes on all sides. It takes more preparation while they're in the child welfare system. It takes strong connections with the campus support program. It takes a lot of different changes each step along the way. And I think that many are very committed to doing that. So that's a little bit about the education. Let's look at THP+ foster care. So this is the program, as we all know. It was modeled after THP+, in a very strong way. There's some differences, the most significant of which is this is a foster care placement. It's a licensed foster care placement, and unlike THP+, it is a federal entitlement. It is an open-ended funding source. So those are two pretty big differences. Here has been the growth in THP+ foster care. Big. That doesn't take a person with a PhD to read this chart. It's exploded in the last couple of years, and that's really because of the extension of foster care. There was a slight delay in implementation of this program, but it is really rocking and rolling now, and we have a lot of young people in this program. It is the second most prevalent placement after the supervised independent living placement, and pretty much every quarter it keeps closing the distance. I don't think it will ever be the most prevalent placement, but it is the second most prevalent placement at this point. And we have 222 of the 1,436 young people who were in the program on July 1st were probation youth. So the story there is that the program was very utilized by young people in probation kind of in the beginning. It was a larger proportion then. Then as the program has been implemented around the state, it's kind of slowed. It's kind of reduced as a proportion. So I can't say to you what the right proportion is. I know that many providers and counties around the state are utilizing THP+FC, and working in close partnership with probation, because we know that there's a shortage of placements for those young people, just as there are with just dependents. So who is placing in THP+FC? Well, Alameda has been, has a long and strong tradition of THP+ and THP+ foster care, and they, continue to have it with a very close second by Los Angeles. And then you can see the figures go up. These are the top 10, and these are counties that placed an NMD in THP+FC as of July 1st, 2015. So it is nothing more and nothing less than a snapshot on that date of the 1,436 young people. This is where they were placed, the top 10. But really the absolute number doesn't really tell us much. What tells us more is the percentage of NMDs that are placed in this placement, and that's the percentage you have on the left-hand side. So statewide, 15% of NMDs are placed in THP+FC. And you can see in these counties it ranges anywhere from 7% really to 34%. So you can kind of see, if your county is kind of at the average, if it's utilizing it more, if it's utilizing it less. And, you know, I'm not here to tell you it's good or bad. I mean, we really strongly believe in this placement. We believe in the set of providers that are working with these young people. We feel like it's a great combination of affordable housing and supportive services. So we won't pretend to be biased and unbiased and say we don't think this is a great placement. It should be something that is accessible, and it's looking like statewide that's certainly creeping up. In our interviews, we talked to providers, why aren't you growing more? And some of the answers we got back were you kind of need a set number of young people to create a program in a certain geographic area and to expand it. So we all know that there is a set ratio of case managers or social work case managers to youth, and so the kind of economics of it becomes somewhat complex in terms of the kind of growth trajectory for a program. But we did not hear from any county that they did not want to place in THP+FC, kind of quite the opposite. We heard a high level of interest and willingness to place there and kind of an interest in more available placements. So let's look at who the providers are of THP+FC. Again, this is the first time this information has been shared in our annual report, and you can really see environmental alternatives is by heads and shoulders above the largest FC provider, almost double the next provider. And environmental alternatives in a lot of different counties around the state, and you know, with this set of providers under, following it. And these are young people that serve THP Plus over 12 months. So this is not a moment in time. So the turnover is included in this figure. And so you know, another figure that we can try and get to next year is that moment in time figure. The moment in time figure combined with the 12 number of young people served over 12 months helps us have a better sense of how much turnover is happening in the program. Frankly, we do not want turnover. Every time there's turnover, it's an opportunity for a young person to become homeless. And now I know as a provider you might say, it's easy to say that, Amy. There's very real issues happening in these programs. We can't keep young people there if they're not complying. And so I respect and appreciate that point of view too. Statewide, we have THP+FC in almost every county. There's only 6 counties where a THP+FC program is not physically located. And you know, given how rural some of our counties are, I think this is spectacular. I think, I mean, you've got massive rural counties in the north that do have this program. And so that's very exciting. It's not everywhere, but I would argue it doesn't necessarily have to be in every county. Some of these counties are truly so small, they have less than a dozen young people in their whole system. So it's a very hard economic case to make that a program should be resident given those economics. But that being said, of course, we want young people to be served where they're from. So sometimes there's no easy answers, but I think that 52 really says a lot about the provider and the county community over the last couple of years. In the housing model, you know, it's very, very similar. It's almost identical to THP+. But again, can we do something with this host family model? You know, can we kind of pump that up through some creativity? It's a very fair rate that is paid in THP+FC. Can we make that work for us in a new way? And so many of you are thinking about that. Some of you are doing it. And it would be great to come back next year and see that host family number tick up somewhat. And we'd be very interested in working with those of you who want to pilot some of these methods to brainstorm it or to create some kind of learning community. How can we tap into this, this senior market, for lack of a better term, because they're out there. So the youth data, much less is available. Everything we're going to talk about now is really through surveys and I mean through interviews and some of our surveys, because we've just launched the THP+FC participant tracking system. It wasn't in place last year, but hopefully next year the report will include information from that system. But through interviews, here's what we heard about the program. Absolutely the issue of youth with serious mental health needs. That when we surveyed the counties, more than half of them strongly agreed that they would like more providers who serve youth with special needs. There's a very real challenge in placing these young people. We know they can't stay in a group home. Where do we put them safely? And I think a lot of people are struggling with that. We have a smattering of providers who do receive or are EPSDT certified. It's not the majority by a long shot. And even then, we really hear of examples where even a very high quality program that receives EPSDT, the challenges are still there. We also, parenting youth in THP+FC, again, there are a lot of parallels between the two programs. About 1 in 6 participants are custodial parents, and about 1 in 3 young women in THP+FC are custodial parents. And so, that has really clear implications about the access to child care. The issue of the uneven administration of the infant supplement. Now, that came up in our interviews with the providers. The policy on it is very clear. The policy is the infant supplement is paid to the THP+FC provider. Some providers pass a portion of it through to the youth in the form of a slightly larger kind of allowance, and others don't. But the policy is clear, but there was a perception in our conversations that there was kind of an inconsistent implementation. Another from our interviews with providers and counties, the permanent affordable housing. Some young people can transition into THP+, but even after that, where are they going? How are we building this bridge between these programs and permanent affordable housing? Some organizations are, penetrating that. I think a much broader sense is that it's hopeless. Why bother? There's no affordable housing. And I think that is well, one, not true. Someone's got to live in it. But it's also speaks to the complexity of accessing the system. As we've covered in previous trainings, it's extremely localized. It's literally property by property. And most organizations do not have the funding to dedicate a quarter of a person's time to vetting all of these properties. So it's kind of a chicken and egg thing. The money's not there to kind of build the capacity, and because there isn't the knowledge of the sector, we're kind of missing the boat. Now that's not true for everyone. I want to make sure to say that. Some organizations, their young people are pretty much going straight into permanent affordable housing. So the other things that we heard from providers and counties is around the regulations. There is a work group, as I'm sure many of you are aware, and some of you are probably even on, to kind of revisit THP+FC regulations. They were done in kind of a hurry-up style. We wanted to get this program up the door. It was already delayed, and so some of the issues that are being revisited is the ratio, the requirement that all case managers hold a master's degree. How productive is that? How necessary is it? Also, how we calculate the ratio of the social worker to the number of young people, and then also some kind of probably slightly outmoded restrictions on non-foster youth living with foster youth in this placement. So the California Alliance for Child and Family Services is really working closely with DSS and the counties and many of us to try and move that process forward. And we have heard that there's supposed to be, I think, draft policies by the end of the year. So very exciting. And as soon as we hear about what they are, we'll make sure to share it with this community. So let's talk about some of the implications. Again, we don't do this annual report just to say, isn't this interesting? We really do it to try and hopefully improve the quality of the program, as well as to shine a light on what is going well. We don't want to just identify the areas for improvement. But the mental health need, that is the number one finding from this annual report. We have young people with serious mental health needs. We are struggling to serve them in THP+FC. Again, next year, every year we learn something. Next year we're going to try and identify the actual number of youth with serious mental illness. And we're going to determine how that is defined and then actually be able to include that, because until we can have a better sense of who these young people are and how many there are, we're probably not going to move forward too much. So the policy solution or potential policy solution that's being talked about, one is a tiered rate where young people who meet a certain diagnostic criteria would receive an enhanced rate. And also one is, how do we expand availability of EPSDT? So, this, counties, it is a federal entitlement. It is an open-ended entitlement. And yet often at the local level, it's really managed as though it is a fixed benefit. And so how do we make this available to the fullest extent? How do we get providers who are serving young people who qualify to be certified providers? And that is a major concern we have. We know providers want to do this. We know they have an interest in offering these therapeutic skills services, but the first thing they will tell us is, Amy, there's no contract at the local level. I can want this all I want, but if there's no money to do it, me getting certified doesn't mean anything. So we have to find a way to get to that money at the local level. And it's not about, really directing it away from other children. We need more of it. Now, that would be a problem under any circumstances, but this is a federal entitlement. There is no rationale for rationing it. So I don't have the solutions there either. Patrick Gardner has been a longtime champion of this issue, along with, the counties are concerned about it. This is a centerpiece of the whole CCR implementation. So we're not the only ones who are raising the need for more mental health money. But we definitely want to be part of that conversation because we know that more THP+FC providers can be successful if they can offer those therapeutic services. And when they're successful, the young people are successful. So parenting youth. This is another area where the policy solution is simple but terribly complex. It's simple in that they need access to subsidized child care. It's terribly complex in that it's super expensive, and there are a lot of people need subsidized child care. And so, there was a policy effort towards the end of the last budget year to try and ensure that children in foster care, that their caregivers had access to child care. We're hoping that that will come forward again this year and that we can play some part in the conversation to help improve access to child care because child care is very expensive. The good news is the number of parenting dependents is not significant, but even a small number multiplied by a big number is a big number. You heard it there. The next is the preventing first and repeat pregnancies. So this is something the John Burton Foundation is hoping to really prioritize in the upcoming legislative and budget year. And those of you who are interested in this and want to partner on it, we need your help. We're really, we've had a massive demographic shift in foster care. We have more young adults and older youth than ever. And so, the counties ensuring that they have the financial support to do the social worker, caregiver, and youth training in order to prevent these pregnancies. It's not as simple as throwing a condom at a young person. This has to be trauma-informed. This has to be integrated. This has to start early, and it has to be talked about in the context of their health and development. It's a big change, but the good news is that the data we have is so compelling, not just on the number of young people who are becoming parents, but unfortunately on the rate of detention among the children of dependents. So those are that's one policy solution. I'm sure there are many others, but it's one that we hope to move forward on, and we hope to be sharing more information about it with you in the new year. Higher education, again, we saw that really THP+, young people are not achieving a lot. We don't know about THP+FC yet because we've just started implementing the tracking system. And so we want to make sure we're just not extending the runway, as we often use that metaphor. And so what are some policy solutions there? One is a thoughtful implementation of AB 824. So this was led by the National Center for Youth Law, and the author was Assemblymember Shirley Weber. It did a lot of things. I think the one thing it did that maybe fewer people know about, it changed the definition for foster youth services, and it massively increased the amount of money in the program. But for the first time, it also includes some post-secondary ed language. And so we're extremely excited about that and appreciative of that. Another kind of solution, this kind of practice or policy, is we have these 25 campuses that are going to be getting this $15 million, and they're spread around the state. So we want you as a community to know where are these centers of excellence, and let's get young people attending those schools. A young person at a school that doesn't know what a foster youth is, that doesn't know about their financial aid, that doesn't know about what benefits they can receive, is completely differently positioned than a young person who lands on a campus with dedicated funding to serve them. And this new program, which is called K-Fees, up to $5,000 per youth can be used to serve these young people in education. So the campuses have been preliminarily picked. That needs to be confirmed by the Board of Governors. But we hope that, we really hope that those are utilized. So that's one. And then clarity about which counties have opted into 1252. When we surveyed them, it was almost half that intended to. Now we need to take it to the next level and say, okay, who submitted letters to DSS, and let's make all of that public and clear, and let's really have some transparency around, okay, if I'm a foster youth, if I'm in this county, if I'm enrolled in school, do I get that third year? So that's been moving forward, but with that level of interest, we just want a level of transparency about that. And then one last one under this one is better financial aid outreach. We know only about 13% of young people who are in college or former foster youth receive the Pell Grant, the Cal Grant, and the Chafee Grant. And so the FAFSA season opens on January 1st, and the opportunity to really fully exploit financial aid for our young people is there. The Cal Grant deadline, I believe, is March 2nd or March 3rd. And so let's really not let this financial aid season go by without, applying for young people. Even if we don't know they're going to attend, it does not in any way hurt them to apply. They will not be financially liable for it. They can simply not elect to receive it. And we hear that a lot, where it's like, well, I don't know if they're going to go. Well, if they do not, we learned about how the Chafee Grant is kind of administered more and more. And essentially what they told us is young people who don't meet that Cal Grant deadline, or at least get their Chafee in by July, they're pretty much only going to get it if there's enough money returned. So these deadlines mean everything. So enough about that. Permanent affordable housing, this one is more of a practice solution on how to access it. Who are your developers? What are their properties? What young people, what individuals can live in those properties? How do I get on the wait list? How do I manage my name on the wait list? It's probably one of the more tedious processes in existence, but if we can help young people do it, then they can really benefit. And then the earned income tax credit. This is, you might be thinking, that seems, really? But the truth is, we know how many parenting dependents we have. 1 in 3 in THP+ is parenting, and half are parenting in THP+, or 1 in 3 in THP+FC, and half in THP+. This is, you don't have to have earned a lot of money. You don't really have to have earned almost, there's no minimum income requirement. And so if a young person is a parent, the age goes all the way down to 18. If they're a non-parent, it becomes a little bit less useful for our population. But given the number of parents we have, every young person should be claiming this. And now, thanks to our legislature and Governor Brown, we have a state-earned income tax credit, which has gotten a little bit of criticism. People say, wow, you have to be really poor to get that. Well, thankfully, or not, our young people are that poor. They will get the state-earned income tax credit. And so what can you do in your county, in your program to highlight this? It's the biggest cash transfer program in the country. In California alone, we did not claim $3 billion. So I'll stop preaching about that, and let's go to some questions about the findings before we move on. So the first one, what is the difference between a custodial parent rate between entry and exit? On entry, did you count currently pregnant as a custodial parent even if they did not have another child? That's a great question. They had to have given birth. To be a custodial parent on at entrance, they had to have given birth. So they could have been pregnant. Yeah, good clarification. Next question and/or comment is, in regards to the high rate of residents enrolling from college, do you think it has to do with recipients enrolling for the financial aid and once they get it, disenrolling? Well, that's a very interesting possibility. I can't say we'd thought of that. I mean, if they are doing that, then they need some serious financial aid counseling because that is a short-term strategy that's going to get them into long-term trouble. So thank you for raising that as a possibility, and so that we can all be mindful to try and prevent that. So the next one is, what learnings can Alameda County offer to other counties to increase THP+FC participation? For example, in my county, there is a bias by youth and their attorneys for a SILP, and they're attracted to the direct recipient of money, even if the SILP readiness assessment does not recommend the SILP. This is an excellent point and something we hear a lot about. I just want my money, and I don't want a social worker, I don't want a provider, I don't want, so I think that would be, I think that's an excellent idea. Let's do take the time and draw the knowledge from counties that have a high penetration rate for this placement. Are they framing it in a certain way? How are they marketing it to young people and the attorneys to really get those high rates? That's a really good point, and I'm going to note that and see if we can partner with some of these counties that have the high utilization rates, because AB 12 is all about youth choice, youth voice. If you've got a young person who's saying thanks, no thanks, it really does tie the hands sometimes. Next question, are current foster parents able to become host families to get more support into the home and give youth budgeting practice? That's, short answer, yes. The next question is, right now, my county only has one participant in the THP+FC host family, and we're debating the value of continuing it. I'm interested in learning from other counties with better utilization of THP+ host family. We can definitely share counties that are utilizing that more. And again, stepping back and thinking about this senior community. I mean, I previously have been very skeptical about these intergenerational models. I think they sound like kumbaya, but in practice, I don't, I just haven't been a big believer. You've got a traumatized young person who's at a totally different developmental stage, living with someone who may be of a different ethnic or racial background, a different class background. In the past, it kind of seemed to me like, Pollyanna-ish. However, I have changed my point of view because of this housing crisis. We have to find ways to get past that and to make these meaningful connections. The rent in San Francisco, Alameda, Contra Costa, the whole Bay Area, really the whole state, has gotten to a crisis point. And so that is what has pushed me to believe that these unconventional models may be worth taking a second look at. Another one is our county is looking into the stay in San Bernardino and the bridges in Los Angeles to explore opportunity to create similar programs for youth and NMDs with chronic mental health care needs. We are teaming up with our local MHSA, Prop 63, in our exploration. Well, thank you very much for sharing that. I mean, that is the kind of collaboration that we really need. One thing we also heard from several providers in several counties is they're beginning to think about what are the criteria that would allow a young person, if they wanted to stay in that group home. That we've been treating this group home restriction as kind of a hard stop. However, it does state that if a young person meets certain eligibility criteria, a serious mental illness, that they may be able to continue to live in them. So some counties and some providers are beginning to test that and say, well, if the young person wants this, what are these criteria exactly, and how can we make this option available? It's kind of, a little bit controversial, given the big push away from group homes. But again, if a young person would elect that, and they felt that could offer them a level of safety and stability, and they met those criteria, it's certainly something to noodle on. So if you have any other questions, feel free to shoot them over. And just with the remaining short period of time, we're going to talk about some reminders and updates. I want to just remind everyone, a lot of what we've talked about today, we're going to go in a lot more depth on the 17th. We just added a workshop that is going to be the, hopefully, alpha and omega of EPSDT. If you have any interest whatsoever of possibly bringing this program to your program, we're going to hear from providers who've gone through the certification process. We're working on securing a consultant who walks with providers through this process. What does it pay for? What doesn't it pay for? How much money does it give you? How much hassle is it? Does it kind of change the nature of your program? What is good about that? What's bad about it? So that's one that's just been added. And there's just a great selection of workshops, and they're great because you are doing them, those of you on this call. I'm really excited about the group that we have. Now, the promotional code, if 3 or more of your staff members are going, the first 2 have to pay, and then you're free after 3. So you just enter that in the promotional code section. And the idea there is, we know you guys don't have extra money. Pretty much the fee that we charge is just to cover the food, and so you can use that. We also want to share information about, we've always wanted young people to be a part of this conference, but we've had challenges having it be meaningful. We've kind of dropped young people into the conference. They don't really understand what all this is about. They don't understand why they're there. And so for the first time ever, we're partnering with Foster Club to select what they call youth scholars. And their process is a very interesting one. They have a whole day-long leadership academy on the day before the conference to contextualize the experience. So to help them understand the policies and practices behind THP-Plus and THP-Plus foster care, to help them think about what they're trying to get out of the experience, and then they really support them on the day of the conference. And so it's, I think it's a really, it's a trial balloon for us, but I feel very hopeful it's going to be a success. It's something that the Blueprint Conference did in October. And so we would love it if your young people are one of these 25. They get flown down to LA, they get to stay in the DoubleTree, they are part of this leadership institute on the day before. And so the application link is on the slide, and just go ahead and complete that. And we'd love to see a really robust group of young people who understand what they're doing there and understand how they can contribute, because we know they can, but it does take support. We just don't want to drop them in there. Last thing is just our next call. Again, we're going to every other month, so our next call is on the 14th. And then one last update is we have a new staff member. We were devastated to see Cecilia leave JBF. She is taking a 2-month-long trip with her mother to Vietnam, and then when she comes back, she's moving to New York. But we have hired Kevin Clark, who has a spectacular individual. He's worked in a lot of different capacities, and he's going to be taking Cecilia's place. And so Kevin starts with us on Monday. So Kevin is your new Cecilia. So many of you find that I may not be as responsive as you'd like me to be, and then you track down Cecilia, and then she makes me do whatever I'm supposed to do. And so now Kevin is going to play that role. So I want to thank everyone for being on the call today. I know it's me talking a lot, and I really appreciate your patience and your interest. There are only about 37 slots left for our institute, and we do have a hard cap. One of the reasons why we can hold the institute is because we hold it at the California Endowment, and that is free. But it does mean that the space is not as big as some hotel conference spaces. So we have a hard cap, and there are 37 slots. So if you really want to go, please sign up, here in the next short period of time, because we do want you to be able to attend. All right, I'll be posting this on the website and also setting up follow-up materials. So I think with that, thank you again for being on the call, and that concludes today's web seminar.